All right. So one thing I want to go ahead and just bring to the attention. I seen a post that said that people with small locks, they're starting to come out. So one thing that I want to bring focus and attention on is just reminding that part to density ratio is a big thing. I know that we want a perfect grid. You know what I'm saying? Perfection is everything nowadays, right? The smaller it seems like is the better. But that's not always the best. For me, the most important thing is the loc stability and loc integrity. After that, the grid comes next. Yes, you want to make sure that you facilitate wonderful work, but at the same time, you have to understand that even with locks, you're still going to go through the regular body changes, okay? Whether you be male or whether you be female. And for women, just in general, you have life events like pregnancies and menopause that will cause you to go through extreme shedding, okay? And you need to make sure that your locks are able to go through this process without compromising your whole entire journey. Now, some things, you can't help. But in my 10 years of doing locks, I only seen one person who had to cut their hair due to postpartum shedding. So that's just letting you know that if you do the lock size correct with part to density ratio, and that's just meaning that making sure that the locks are stable enough to go through a grow, rest, and shed phase, right? And still be able to lock, okay, to the other hairs that is still connected to the scalp. Because even though you see a long lock, right, not all of those hairs towards the end is going to be connected to the root and to the scalp. And that's because most of those hairs have grown, they're rested, and then they shed out. But the part of uniform matting is that it entangles inside of a knot and it encapsulates itself. So as long as the lock size is decent enough to sustain this growth pattern, that means that the hairs will lock in and you still will have hairs that is a sufficient number that's still connected to the scalp in order to hold the stability of the lock in place. So meaning it doesn't detach, okay? So again, I love the fact that we are producing wonderful work out here. But the importance of producing wonderful work is to make sure that it is stable for people and so that it can last for a long time. Also, too, as well, be sure to take care of your body and making sure that your hormone levels, and not only just your hormone levels, but your vitamin levels are at a sufficient number. If you have deficiencies, like iron deficiencies, those things would need to be rectified to make sure that you don't induce more shedding, okay? So meaning you have a normal growth, rest, and shed period, but you can also have abnormal shedding. This can be due to different things that's going on hormonal with your body, things that you can't change, but it's things that you can change, like iron supplements, and talking with your provider to make sure that your body is in the best health so that your body can supply your hair with the nutrients that it needs so that it can be stable. So when I say that we start with hair growth, we start from inside and then we work our way out. So these are going to be the things that you're going to work on to make sure that you have a sufficient amount of hairs to do a stable lock and they're not overly shedding. So again, beautiful is great, but also make sure that the stability of the lock is the most important thing. Some other contributors to locks downsizing a little bit early that people may not be aware of, and to me it comes from neatness and work, is when you are using a comb, okay, to pop all of the hairs off to make sure that the grid is particularly straight, right, to want to retighten it. It may be okay for larger size locks to go through this because you may have a sufficient number of hairs within that section so that you can pop them off and clean it up and the lock still be stable. But for these small size locks, you cannot break off every single hair in order to get a straight part. If you want maintenance to be clean, so meaning for your parts to be clean, I honestly would suggest that you go into your retighteners at an earlier appointment date, so meaning maybe within your 4 to 6 week mark, making sure that you are using not overly conditioning shampoo so that you don't have as many free waves. And understand that some textures does have freeaways, and as they lock, they become more compacted. So try not to go too crazy and just trust the process. But those are the things that I think that you can help. Lock sizes at the beginning of the journey, and not breaking down individual hairs when you are doing the retightening. Also, just making sure that your hormone and vitamin level is sufficient. If you know you're prepping yourself for surgery, know that general anesthesia does cause typical shedding. So you may incur more shedding than normal. Just make sure that you watch out for these things. Make sure that you pay attention between you and your practitioner. You guys should be a great team to identify, to track, and make sure that you guys are on the right process. And always start with a sufficient grid, okay? A sufficient grid to have stable locks. That is the most important thing with locks, not just the beauty.